Hello, and welcome to Making Sense of It. This is produced or sent to you in thanks to the Glasser Institute for Choice Theory that helps us begin to look at some simple concepts that may not have been seen as being simple until you kind of understand the language and or the feelings behind them. So our speaker today is a very dear friend, and glad to have you back, Jan Moray. And she is going to be talking about the seven deadly and connecting habits, but it is accepting an often overlooked connecting habit. So it sounds interesting and mysterious. So welcome everyone. And Jan, thank you for being here and welcome.
Well, thanks, Mona. Thanks for inviting me back, and it's good to see everybody again. So, and as we're all followers of Glasser and choice theory, we know all about external control, right? That it's an attempt to get others to think and do what we want them to think and do, and so we're trying to change others, and and with our children, in an emergency, a lot of times we feel justified to tell them what to do and set them straight. But we make that decision about whether it's going to be helpful to them or harmful to them. And so we feel that they need to be called out on that, but we must recognize that we're still exerting external control on them. And how much longer do we continue to tell them what to do and tell them to put a coat on when it's cold outside, or not to go out with their hair wet? And at some point you have to pull back and allow them to be who they are. And that's one of the most rewarding and one of the most difficult things sometimes for parents, is to accept children, for who they are. And, and even as adults, and I can say this from personal experience, you still look to your parents and you want approval from them. And so I try to remember that with my kids, who are now adults, that even though they are adults and they're living their own life, I still need to be careful as to how I respond to some of the things that they say and do. And but sometimes that's difficult to accept what they want to do, because we have such high expectations for our kids. We want them to be the best, to succeed, our definition of success. And so, but what the message we need to give to them is that we accept them no matter what they do, even if we feel disappointed. We understand what total behavior is, and that all behavior is purposeful, and that they're getting something out of it. So we try to understand what that is, and accept who they are. And so even though you accept that your child is doing something that you don't necessarily think is the best for them, doesn't mean that you agree with what they're doing. And I think that's a distinction that a lot of people struggle with, because acceptance doesn't mean agreement. It's I accept you at this moment think that this is the best thing for you. I may not like it, but my opinion really doesn't matter at this point. So, and there's nothing wrong with struggle, with acknowledging that you're struggling with their decisions. It's not, and it's difficult because you need to do it in a way that you're not trying not to be judgmental and telling them you're really screwing your life up, but to let them know that that's not the way I would do things, doesn't mean that the way I did it was the right way. And so please bear with me, because this is a struggle. And so you're opening up that communication to let them know, because I think it's important to let them know when you disagree, but not allow them to think that you don't love them anymore, or you're not accepting of them because of what they do. And I think that's a difficult thing to do sometimes. So you're struggling with what they're doing, but you're supportive of them and will help them, and you'll still be there. And okay, so let's see. I think of my sister. She loved to dance. She danced ballet, and that's what she wanted to do. However, she was also very good at the piano. She really was practiced a lot and won some competitions and things. And so my mom wanted her to go to college and study piano, but she wanted to study dance. And so she compromised and did both. And so, I mean, she was so good that she was accepted at Juilliard for both dance and for piano. But my parents wouldn't let her go to New York. And so she went to TCU instead. But she did study both, and she got her degree. She got her degree in both. And mom, told her, you need to get that college degree. You have to get the degree. And so she did it. But once she graduated, she got the degree. She got out of school early, and she went to New York and danced for a few years, and because that was her love, and that's what she wanted to do. And even though it was difficult for my mom to accept that, she did, she did what she wanted to do. Of course, then it was big sister, me, who finally wrote my little sister a letter and said, what are you going to do for the rest of your life? You're 26 years old and you're still an apprentice. I mean, she was always hoping for somebody else to break a leg or have some problems so she could perform. She was, she had to learn everything, but she never got to do the performing. And so she decided to go back to school and got her MBA, and now is a very successful CEO of a very successful company, doing quite well. And I think all of those years of the discipline of both the piano and the dance, because she was a perfectionist, those skills were good for her in being able to develop the type of company that she developed. And so accepting her, that her love was the dance, and allowing her to go through and doing it, and until, I think it was better for me to come in instead of my mom, even though my mother was complaining to me every time she talked to me about how worried she was about my sister. I'm like, I'm tired of hearing this. So to do something, but it turned out really well for her. And so she was the one who made the decision when it was time to stop. And actually, even today, she says she still has that letter that I sent her that really changed her life. And so when we're dealing with people, we have several choices in how we respond to what they're doing. And this focuses on trying to do internal control. Is that we can just leave the situation. I mean, my parents could have told my sister, we're not paying for your education. You're not getting a degree in something that's going to do anything for you, so you're on your own, or they could have changed the way they thought and what they did, which is kind of what they did. But then they also accepted her for who she is. I mean, that's what she wanted to do, was to dance. And she did it. And she's still a dancer. You can still tell by the way she walks and the way she carries herself. That's still within her. And so having this acceptance, I mean, that's one of these connecting habits, and it's one that I think is one of the harder ones to do, especially when it's somebody very, very close to us. And then I'll give another example of me when I started out. As most of you know, my undergraduate degree was in engineering. So I was an engineer. I was used to being the only female in all my high school math and science classes. It was me and the guys. When I went to college, I think the chemical engineering department was 25% female, which the professors thought that was great. That was a big percent compared to some of the other disciplines. But 1 out of 4 is still pretty small group of women. And so when I got my first job, I was the first female engineer there and the only female engineer there for the whole time I was there. So I got used to being around the guys. Though I didn't do the things, I didn't become a guy myself. I didn't expect them to change what they were doing because I was there. I respected them, and respect is another one of the connecting habits. I respected, them, that they were there first, and I was intruding in their space. In fact, when I first got there, they were so proud because they finally added a women's restroom in the pilot area where I worked. I didn't have to go back into the main building to go to the bathroom. Fortunately, there were some female operators there who forced that issue before I got there. But it was like I would have been fine with walking to the other building. It really wasn't that far. And then it's kind of good to get up away from your desk every once in a while and take a walk and go somewhere. But I didn't make them change the way they were. I did set boundaries, and every once in a while, there might be something that, I didn't feel was appropriate. But then later it got to be the guys would get on each other for saying and doing things around me that they didn't feel was appropriate. So that was kind of nice. And so, it was the kind of thing that they accepted me because I didn't force myself upon them. I respected who they were, accepted who they were, and it became mutual. But I must say that maintenance always did my jobs first. And all the guys got really upset about that because every time they wanted maintenance to do something, well, Jan has me doing something over here. So, but that's the way life is. You find how you can take advantage of a situation and work things out so that so it all works out in the end. So being accepted, is one thing. You're working on being accepted yourself, but then we also need to look at how do we accept other people, and then how about when somebody has an idea or a belief that is very different from yours. At first you might feel uncomfortable or a little put off by it because it's different from what you're used to. And sometimes so you tend to shun those people because it's a bit uncomfortable being around there. And that's where, I really challenge people is to know that people are different. We live in a very diverse country. People from all over the world live here, from different religions, different backgrounds and stuff. And we need to be open to people's beliefs. And things are always changing, and we're learning more and we're finding out more things. But a lot of times, the first time somebody gives you an example or says something, it just kind of doesn't sound right, and you're against it. So I'm going to give you a couple of examples here. Anybody recognize the name Nicolaus Copernicus? He came up with the idea that he was a Polish astronomer and mathematician, came up with the idea that the Earth was not the center of the universe, which was very, sacrilegious at the time, that how can you say that the Earth is not the center of the world? He said, no, the sun is. And his theory was widely criticized and was really not accepted until over 200 years after his death, because, his idea was so novel and so different that he would have received a lot of hate mail, if he were in our world today, about having the audacity to say that the Earth was not the center of the universe. And of course, he wasn't 100% correct, because the sun is not the center of the universe either. But at least he started the thinking that maybe things are not exactly the way that they are, and to understand that we live in a dynamic world. Things are constantly changing, and we're constantly trying to understand why they are. And we have this belief, and it works for us until it doesn't work. And then when it doesn't work, we got to figure out another way to explain what's going on. And then there's another example I want to give. And anybody heard of a guy by the name of Ignaz Semmelweis? He's a little more obscure. He was a Hungarian obstetrician. And back in 1850, he made the recommendation that doctors wash their hands before they deliver babies. And at the time, that was such a big change in their habits. He received a lot of backlash. They were, who are you to tell us to wash our hands? How insignificant. But what he had noticed is that he was an obstetrician, and mortality rates were really high for newborns. But he noticed that the mortality rates for babies delivered through a midwife were a lot lower than those delivered by physicians. And so he's going, okay, what's happening here? And he realized that a lot of the doctors, they would be out in the lab playing with cadavers or whatever it was, then come in and deliver a baby. And so he said, well, maybe there's something that they were transferring. And so he started doing it himself, washing hands. And he found out that he was more successful when he started doing that practice, but it was not accepted for the industry at all. And he was ostracized. He was sent to a mental institution because they thought he was crazy. And he died, in disgrace at the time. But look at us now. We're all real concerned about good hygiene and making sure that things are going well. And so, we're there you go. And so we may have gone the pendulum has swung way the other direction, maybe. But we need to find what works for us, but be open to ideas. And so a lot of times when you first hear an idea, you don't want to hear it. It's you think it's ridiculous because this has always worked for me. Why should I change? But I think that and I see in our country, we're so divided right now that it's like there's no acceptance of one side or the other, or very little. And so I think if we learn to be a little more accepting and to try to understand where the other side is coming from, and that would that may help us to get along a little more. And this whole thing on censoring has just gotten way out of control, because most of the times when you first hear something, it doesn't sound right, and so you need to sit with it. You need to let it stew a little bit and talk about it. But not being able to talk about something holds us back. And we don't really learn, we don't really progress. And so, I'm seeing too, a lot of times when organizations censor is because, you're finding things out that they don't want you to know about. It kind of reminds me of the pedophile that goes up to the kid, molests the kid, and says, now don't tell your parents, don't tell don't tell any adult what's going on, because they don't want to be found out. Anytime there's somebody saying, no, you can't watch this, no, you can't see this, alarm bells should be going off saying, I need to investigate. There's something else going on here. And so, and usually, when somebody's honest, they're open to debate. They're saying, let's talk about it. I'm willing to show all the information that I have. I'm willing to share it with you. When somebody's opening their arms and said, I'm willing to share it with you, let's have a good discussion. But if somebody's saying, no, you can't believe that, that's wrong, and then alarm bells should be going off. Say, okay, there's something else going on here. I need to figure it out. And and probably not real popular to quote Hitler, but Hitler once said, how fortunate for governments that the people they administer don't think. Now think about that for a minute. When you're just allowing somebody to tell you, somebody who's exerting their external control to tell you what to do, how to think, that's really not the way we want to be. We need to seek out those opposing views, try to be accepting of something else that's out there, because we need to be making our own decisions. It's our decision to make as to what side of the fence we're on, or how we want to respond to something. We don't want somebody else to be telling that to us. And I mean, the beauty of free speech is that we all have a voice, and we all have the right to be heard. And when only voice is allowed and you're fearful about opposing that view, you're being fed propaganda, and I'm going to be real honest with that word. I know it's a tough word, but when you're only allowed to hear one side, it's dangerous. And so I think not until you've considered multiple sides of the story can you really make a decision that's right for you. And so I mean, I know it's hard to oppose the view that everybody has, but I guess what I'm trying to say here is, and let's just not discard those opposing views at first glance. Let's take a little closer look at them and see, and just talk about it and think about it a little bit and see, maybe this makes a little bit more sense. Maybe I can, learn a little bit more. And I think that'll help to bring people together, because you're bringing that discussion. Because if you're not allowed to talk to each other about it, then you're never going to move forward. And so if we can have those honest discussions together, then I think that's going to make us all better people and a better place to be. So that's my spiel.
Oh, all right. Very good. Would you give that quote from Hitler again?
Sure. Let me find it here. It says, how fortunate for governments that the people they administer don't think. I'm reading a book right now from by Robert Koyabashi, something or other. He's the one who wrote Rich Dad Poor Dad. Are you familiar with him?
I am. Yeah.
He's got a book called The Capitalist Manifesto, and it's pretty. I've just started it, but I'm finding it pretty interesting. He doesn't mince words. He tells it like it is, and it's a pretty interesting. It makes you think, and I think that's what we need to do. We need to do more of thinking about things and assessing whether our lives are going the way we want them to go, and take control of our lives. I mean, that's what Glass is all about, right? Take charge of your life, and don't allow others to push you one way or another. Decide what's right for you, and get the information so you can make a good decision about what's right for you. So,
and that taking charge of your life is not being offensive to others or
correct.
or harsh to them.
Correct. And if other people perceive it as being offensive, to understand that is because of what's going on in their head and because of the beliefs that they hold. Mm-hmm. And so let's talk about it. Don't just blow me off and accuse me of being offensive. I mean, I'm not doing it purposefully. I'm really just trying to express my ideas, and I'd like to be able to say what I think. Though you got to be careful, especially with your kids.
And it's so beautiful when you realize, honestly, deep down in your wisdom heart, that acceptance does not mean approval.
Absolutely.
I mean, then you can get along with that very difficult mate,
right?
or children, or
child, or
when you are
or coworker, or boss, or whomever.
Right.
Because they're all around us, right?
Exactly.
Because we know what's best. But
yeah, and you can accept it or not accept it. But I'll see you later.
Right. We can still be friends.
We can still be friends.
One of the real great examples of that was Ruth Bader Ginsburg and Scalia. The two of them, even though they were on opposing sides of just about every judgment, they were friends and they got along well. And that, to me, says so much about both of them, that exactly. they were able to work together, even though they knew that their opinions were diametrically opposed.
Right, exactly. It's finding out. Well, thank you very, very much. And we will go ahead and stop the recording, and those that are present will have additional dialogue with Jan. So,
okay.
Thanks for being here, and blessings to everyone.